I think there's definitely a balance that you need. Like Bill Beckham's Football Manager is maybe like an extreme version of a...
You think?
You're out here playing like Football X and like rooting on your players to get murdered. You might be the baddie, Alice.
Oh no, I know I'm the baddie.
Oh, honestly, you used to while away a Saturday just managing your little team before Gladiators would be on, and catch the end of Blind Date. Hank, just go with it, okay?
I have just gone straight back to my dad's living room. Like I'm on the sofa getting sent to my bed because heartbeats just come on.
Oh yeah, always a sad time, isn't it? Honestly, you throw a question like this to Aaron Falloon or Tony Jameson's way, and they'll be on this for hours, debating Stoke versus Gerbil.
Welcome in, audience, to the WFM Show. My name is Alice, and this is your home for all things women's football in the beautiful game of Football Manager. Now, audience, I think it goes without saying that FM26 did not hit home as I think Sports Interactive intended it to. The community at large, I think, had a very negative reaction to it. So we have to start thinking about FM27 and FM28 and beyond. But how do we learn from the mistakes of FM26, and how do we improve? The only way to do that is to not only look at the last handful of FMs, but to go even further back in time, not just the Sports Interactive series of Football Manager and Championship Manager, but any other retro Football Manager game we can think of today. So I have a packed house. Before I get on to my hosts, I will introduce my lovely guest of the day, FMLlama. Welcome in. How are you doing, friendo?
I am doing fabulously well. I very much admire your very sensitive introduction there to things Sports Interactive could learn. It's been an absolute horror show, and well, you know it. But I also very much like the sensitive way you introduced me into a show that is talking about really old video games. So thank you for that.
No worries. It's a pleasure to have you. As I said before the show, when we came up with the idea for this one, Katy and I immediately had you in mind for it. Even though I actually never knew you, I actually didn't even know if you had played any retro football games. I just assumed you had. My mistake if it was, but I don't think it was.
That was just a very safe bet, isn't it? Get old man on show. He may have played games in past.
Katy, how are you doing, friendo?
I am good, really good, actually. I managed to play a little bit of FM this week on a succession save with some friends, which is quite nice.
Lovely.
So I'm in the process of leaving them an absolute mess to take over from in the summer. But yeah, just been plodding along.
I think a succession save is definitely something I want to kind of do in the future. I actually picked up FM today for the first time in a good few weeks now, and I've started a save in the American system. Speaking of Americans, Ank, how are you doing, friendo?
I am surviving.
Did you enjoy that segue? I'm proud of myself.
Seamless. You are getting better and better, Alice. I'm looking forward to talking about a whole lot of games that I haven't played. Obviously, FM24 was my first FM game. I haven't played any others in the series. So I think I'm here to just interrogate everything you guys say and possibly reminisce about the perspective of other retro management games. Such as managing everything from a Sims household to a roller coaster park to a lemonade stand, because all have been done.
Anchor, I'd like to think of you today as our anchor to bring the three of us down to a level which isn't just nostalgia. We'll be talking about these old school games, and it's very easy to reminisce about games that we played 10, 20 years in the past and see nothing but good things about them when maybe that wasn't quite as accurate as we'd like to think. So I'd like to think you'll keep us down to earth. So, Katy, I want to start with you. I've given you and Llama the homework to think about some of the old school retro games that you played in the past.
Yeah, I panicked there when you said homework. I was like, should I have prepared something? Yes, I did think about them. Oh, you would like me to talk about it?
Yes,
okay.
I would love to. I would love you to start with, what was your favourite retro football game?
That's tricky. Game. So I think probably it's between two. So it's between... now, I need to get the name of this right. FA Premier League Manager 2001.
Okay.
I don't think I had 2002. I think I had 2001, which I used to like sneak onto my dad's computer to play as a child. Or LMA Manager 2003, which I had for the PlayStation. In that game, you know when people talk about like wanting to be able to build their own stadiums? You could do that in LMA 2003. Like, I redeveloped... Oh, where was it? It might have been Anfield, actually. I redeveloped that into a monstrosity. It had like 4 tiers. It seated like 120,000 people, and we never sold it out. Because the game wouldn't stop you from building a stadium that you couldn't support.
So, Kate, picking one of those, let's go with let's go with LMA Manager. I remember LMA Manager a lot more than I remember Premier Manager. Was it? Yeah, it was Premier Manager.
Yeah.
What is it about that game that really holds your memory now? Like, why do you remember that one specifically?
I think it was the level of like customization that you could get into. So like, I think one of the things that people always ask for every year with like Football Manager is having more control over your club. And I'm just gonna Google the game to make sure I'm not misrepresenting this. But there was so much that you could do in that game where like you could change like the construction of your stands. You could pick sponsors, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, you could.
You could sell out advertising hoardings to different companies and be like, okay, I want a champion ad board and it's going to give me X amount of money per week. So you could get really into like into the weeds with it a little bit. But because it was on console, it was super accessible. Yeah. And I think it's one of the things that I don't think really SI do that well on console is make it easy to deal with. Like, the navigation is a bit clunky, whereas with LMA, like, it feels like, and I know I was like 10 when I was playing this, but it felt really like easy to get along with and easy to understand and like easy to just pick up and put down.
Yeah,
you know?
I think I would agree with that with LMA Manager. Like, it was definitely user friendly. Like, there was no part of that game where I was ever like, do you know what? I'm kind of stuck. Like, I think we could look at FM 26 now, and I think all of us here, unless I'm mistaken, when we picked up FM 26, we might have spent quite a deal of time not knowing where something was that we like wasn't quite as intuitive where it was in previous football managers. And like, that is what I liked about those kind of games like LMA Manager. There was definitely, there was no thinking about it. Everything was there. You knew where everything was. You could never struggle to find anything. I do think that we could look at, I do think like a more modern audience of Football Manager might look at LMA Manager and see it as a little bit too superficial, potentially.
I think in some aspects. So I know like the tactics board, I think you only had preset tactics and you had like sliders for depth and not the press, because I don't think a press even existed at that time. But like,
I don't want to talk to people when I'm playing my Football Manager games.
So like like press, like defensive pressing. not like the press.
Oh, right. I thought you meant like talking to the actual press.
Well, I'm not sure if you got to speak to the media, but there was like sliders for like how deep you wanted to defend, for how wide you wanted to play the ball, how attacking you wanted to be, and that was a lot more intuitive. I think like as like a low barrier to entry, and I think the issue with FM now to an extent is that the barrier of entry for like understanding the game is super high, and I think that's why people struggled when we moved. Part of the reason people struggled when we moved to a new UI is because a lot of how people get round that barrier of entry is because they know what the game's going to feel like.
Yeah.
Like they know where stuff's going to be, even if they don't really know how it works. And then when you add that, like, I guess it's almost like a cognitive load thing, right? Like you say to them, right, well, I've moved your tactics, I've moved your recruitment, I've moved where the league table is. No, you cannot see your fixtures under any circumstances. People are like, well, where am I? Right? And then they lose that like routine that they had for playing the game. Like everyone's got a routine when they go into a new club, right? Go into a new club, I'm going to look at the squad, I'm going to look at the finances. And if I can't find that, you know, whereas like with the older games, the barrier of entry for like understanding what was going on was loads lower.
Yeah.
Too simple, maybe. Easier, definitely. And I think it says a lot that like we look back at these games and we're like, actually, it was super fun.
Yeah.
You know?
Ank, on LMA Manager, one of the features of not only LMA Manager, but quite a lot of football management games back in the day was that you weren't just the manager, you weren't just the head coach. You had a lot of control over other aspects of the club, which today's managers in real life, not only today, but that back then wouldn't have had, such as we have more in-depth finances where we get to choose the sponsors. We could even choose the advertising boards. We get to choose the stadium expansion. And we have all of these things that we did back then in those football manager games, although not Sports Interactive. What do you think about that in terms of up against what Football Manager has given us today?
Well, I think like even today in Football Manager, like what you're able to do in the scope of the game encompasses a lot of like director of football, technical director, general manager type roles. When you're talking about recruitment, when you're talking about transfer strategy, we already can do a lot of what real life managers can't do, and sometimes dramatically get sacked over not being allowed to do. Shout out to the fallen of this winter. And so I think like we're already like running with the conceit that like a lot of times we are playing the club rather than playing the manager. And extending that, especially if it's the sort of stuff that you can optionally delegate, just feels like more opportunities for role play, more catering to different kinds of play styles in a way that's really fun. I am curious, if you just never touched things like stadium expansion in those old games, would some AI do it for you? Would it scale up at any point? Or was it just going to be static forever?
No, I think there was some of those old games where there might have been like giving out the responsibilities to somebody else. But I think for the most part, if you weren't the one doing the advertising board, there was no auto button, at least from memory. I might be a little wrong there.
I think there was like a default that would give you like a set amount per season, I think maybe based on your reputation, but then you could change different options and stuff for your sponsorships. And I think one of the things like with the stadium building, I think one of the reasons that I enjoyed that so much is because it felt like the stadium grew with the club.
Yes.
And you could see it grow with the club, which I think you sort of struggle to get now. Yeah. But I also do sort of understand why.
Yeah, you might end up like poor Alice, where you're in Champions League finals and they still think that you're fine to play at Jenner Park.
Yes.
It's always Jenner Park.
It always goes back. Llama, whatever happens, we're always going to end up at Jenner Park. That's just how life is.
All roads lead to Barry.
With an egg-based drink.
Yes.
Yes. egg-based drink of choice.
Okay, just so I know the ropes, that's fine.
Jenner Park with an eggnog and you'll be fine.
Llama, I think you're going to go down a slightly different route potentially to what Katy's done here. So
Right.
I would love to hear your retro Football Manager story. What was your favourite? What really captivated you?
So when you say go down a different route, you mean several decades earlier, don't you?
Potentially.
Okay. Can I also just say, like, I have been on the FM show, your brother podcast, maybe 5 times now.
Yeah.
It's so much classier over here.
Oh, yeah.
Katy just used the phrase cognitive load. Now, when Tony Jameson starts talking to me about loads, I'm done. I'm out of there. This is a classy place to be, so well done on that.
Katy is a very loquacious individual. That's why we
Well,
got
look,
it.
you just used the word loquacious there.
That might be the nicest thing anybody has ever said to me.
I've heard Tony Jameson use the word licorice, but not loquacious. So well done. Right, you would like to hear about some retro Football Manager games.
Shoot.
Okay, look. So I come from an era a little bit further back in time than any of you. I still remember sitting on my tiled living room floor as a small child playing Pong. You remember that little game with the bars and you kind of like bounced the ball between? And you had like not even a joystick, it was just like a twizzly...
Yeah.
Twizzly knob. I've gone Tony Jameson again, the Twizzly knob. So, I started playing these football games.
That's
bit
my
early
new
back.
nickname for Tony.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, get that on his merchandise. So, I mean, Katy spoke with such kind of like reverence about her games of old. Because I was playing much earlier versions, they were garbage. I mean, they were absolute rubbish back in the olden days. Literally, you were doing very little more than pick your team. But like Katy, the excitement of being able to pick which little blob is going to start in the game. Oh, my goodness. So, Alice, shall I tell you about the worst Football Manager game ever?
I would love to hear it.
Okay, so it was on the PC. I say PC, I think we used to call them IBMs back in those days.
Okay, so we're definitely going back.
All right, okay, easy now. I've got feelings. So this game came on a 5.5 or 5.25? 5.25 floppy disk. And it was called Goal 2. A simplistic name for the most simplistic game you could possibly have. Okay, so it was focused on international management. The big selling point of the game that they put on the back of the box/cassette, was that you could take charge of any of 132 nations, including Nepal. So obviously everybody rushed in to manage Nepal. And basically, you had a very limited list of players that you could call up to your international squad. They didn't really have roles. They were either like a defender, a midfielder, or a forward. And then you got to watch their games, and it was literally like watching 22 teeny tiny bars of soap just move around a screen. Are any of you old enough to remember Pac-Man?
Of course.
So these are like really tiny, shrunk down Pac-Men just wibbling their way around the screen. And to supplement the 2D action that unfolded before your eyes, you would get to read lines of text, which was probably your best chance of noticing that a goal had gone in. It was absolute rubbish, played on a machine that was so slow that you were lucky if you got through 3 games before you just decided to jack it all in and go outside to play hopscotch or take your penny farthing to the shop or something. So, but I still remember it. So it must have had a little something. You got to remember, life was black and white back then. We didn't even have colour yet. So it was just fun to be able to play a game. Because can I tell you a little secret, Alice?
Go ahead.
Okay, you're going to promise not to tell the others, okay?
Okay.
And you will edit this out, won't you?
Of course I will.
So
like 100%, Chris, the editor, will edit this out. 100%.
Thank you, Chris. So I'm so old that when I started playing football management games, they weren't even on the computer. My first Football Manager games, you used to find in the back of football magazines like Match and Shoot and 90 Minutes. And you used to write off to the address that it said, and you would send them £2 sellotaped to a bit of paper. And week by week, they would send you a kind of like a postal version of a Football Manager game, and you would like bid for players, but all of the other nerds that were sellotaping their £2 to a piece of paper, they would bid for players as well, and you'd pick your little team. And somehow, okay, so there's no computer coding to decide who wins games. I reckon they were just rolling dice or just kind of like making up numbers down the pub. They would write back to you a week later, and you'd go, "Oh, no, I drew 1-1. You've waited 7 days to find out you drew 1-1. So, like, when I was playing these really basic computer games, they seemed sci-fi compared to playing football management by post.
That is insanity. Like, so, Llama, I'm afraid to ask the same question I asked Katy, but is there anything we're able to learn from these old school games, like from that goal to? Is there anything we can learn for today's Football Manager games?
Well, yes, I think there is. And I think Katy really kind of nuanced this and hinted around this. I think for a while now, Sports Interactive has been on a quest to make the Football Manager series as realistic or as true a reflection of football management as possible. So you think about some elements of the game that they've included and they've encapsulated that a real life manager would do. Things like press conferences, for example, which make the realism of the game greater, but I don't know whether it might just take away some of the playability or the enjoyment of the game. And, back in the 90s, oh God, I said the decade. Back in the 90s, I mean, Football Manager games were not particularly a realistic simulation of the role of a sporting coach. But they were immersive and they were fun and they had playability. And God, honestly, you used to while away a Saturday just managing your little team before Gladiators would be on, and catch the end of Blind Date. Ank, just go with it, okay?
I have just gone straight back to my dad's living room. I'm on the sofa getting sent to my bed because Heartbeats just come on.
Oh yeah, always a sad time, isn't it? So that's the thing I think that they could maybe reflect on, is that as a game, its priority, its number one mission is to make you play one more game, play one more hour. And sometimes I do think that the quest for realism might sometimes trump the quest for playability.
Yeah, it does sometimes get in the way of the enjoyment of the franchise, how they try to make it as realistic as possible.
Yeah, I think Ank made a good point on this earlier as well, talking about how, like, realistically we play as the club, right? We're not a manager, we're doing all sorts of things. And I think that always makes me laugh, because when people ask Miles, like, why can't I decide where we spend our money? He's like, because you're the manager. I'm not the manager. If you look at, like, the Liverpool setup, for example, not only am I Arne Slot, I am also Richard Hughes. I'm also Michael Edwards. I'm also, for some reason, the physio. Right? Why am I deciding if I need to send my player with a broken leg to a specialist or just let them heal in their own time? Who has ever clicked the don't send to specialist button?
There's somebody on a budget somewhere that's just inhuman enough to never send them.
Manager has gone, do you know what? You've broken your leg in 3 places, but you're just going to go out the back and we're going to shoot you.
What I actually don't know.
Release from contract.
If you have a club doctor, you can sometimes send them to the club doctor.
Yeah.
But then there's an option to not send it. Why would you not send it?
Yeah. But also, if I'm just the manager, why am I making that decision? Why is that up to me? Right? And I think one of the other games that I really enjoyed as a kid growing up was Total Club Manager.
Yeah.
Right? and for no other reason that I could spend my wages on whatever, within reason, I wanted. Right? I could buy a nightclub. I could live on a yacht. Right?
You could raise a family and get children.
Yeah. So I think that's a really interesting point to hone in on, Katy, is like, if you are playing as a manager, why are there not more RP decisions relating to your character and what they are doing versus what the club as a whole's decision-making flow is? Because the latter seems to lean away from you are taking on the persona of the manager, whereas the former would give you more investment in like, okay, this isn't just you. This might be a version of you, but...
And I think it's really telling as well, like when creators make content, especially like journeyman content or like journeywoman content, so much of it is about like, I'll only move club if it would make sense. Right, like they will. But everyone that's on Twitch is role playing to maybe not quite to Ank's extent, but it's to some extent, right? Like, I know, like if I'm playing like a journey person save, I will only move if I'm getting paid more money or it's an increase in rep at the club, right? Like I would never move to take less money because who would, right? So I think if you're looking at, like, a lot of people always talk about what a competitor for Football Manager would be. And I think for me, it's if someone could tap back into what made things like Total Club Manager and LMA so good, right? Is like moving away from that hyper realism that Llama was talking about, where like, oh, we have to do like why am I putting up job adverts for strikers? Like, that's my director of football's job. That's not my job. I just tell him I want a striker. He finds me the striker. That's if you're a manager, that's what you do. And I just think they've gone, and some of it is great, right? Like the transfer room stuff, I really like. For selling players, hate it for buying them, but it's so confusing. Like, just let me type in his name or her name and buy the player. Like, that's all I want to do. So I think, like, if you're looking for like a competitor for FM, it's going to be someone who puts you back in the manager's shoes and has that sort of like RP element. The only issue I think they would have is it's going to be so difficult to break people out of being stats nerds, because those are the two people that play FM, right? It is either the people that use it as a base for role-playing beyond everyone's wildest imaginations and rocks up as a bog monster playing a 2-3-5, right? Or it's like, it's the Mustermans of the world, right? I love Musterman, I will confess, but it's the players that want to play Moneyball. And I think what FM does quite well is it gives you the base to do both of those things. And I think for a competitor to tap back into what made the old games so good, they would lose a lot of this side, right? They would lose a lot of the stats nerds. And I think that's what makes it so difficult. But I would play the shit out of a game that lets me buy a yacht again. I really would.
100%.
Like, I would have so much fun. But yeah, I think that's the challenge, I think.
I have sort of a tangent / ramble to build off of that with.
Go
on. So one of my questions about these vintage manager games and about like the competitors to the main series, were you working with real players?
Yeah.
Always?
No.
Or were there
Not
ones
always.
that had, okay. So one of the limitations, I think, with what FM currently is, and this extends a little bit to like FC as well, is there's only so much you can legally or ethically do with real human beings.
Yeah.
It limits the degree to which random events can happen. It limits the degree to which they can be like massive jerks because you have real human beings, real clubs that are litigious, whose licensing you have to respect.
Yeah, like so much of the push for realism is because of licensing, right? Because you can no longer have...
And so I think for me, like the FM competitor, if we're like spitballing around what it might look like, is probably a game that leans away from representing real players and gives you randomized RNG style characters to use as pawns, because
I think you would end up with like a manager equivalent of Pro Evo's Master League when it wasn't real players. Like before they got any licenses, Konami made like, was it Pro Evo 6, 5? And like there was maybe like 4 real players and everyone else was made up, but they were like, everyone got the same made up players. They weren't like new gens. but I don't think many of them were real. They were just like, I guess sort of like when you tick the like use fake players, right? They were real players, but they were not real players. They had different names. But I think the licensing is such a problem now for both players and for clubs, right? Like you couldn't. I think it's part of the reason we can't edit stadiums, right? Because if you edited Anfield, I keep going back to Liverpool as an example because I've had a day and I can't think of any other football clubs, right? But like if you were to edit like Anfield or the Etihad or like Stamford Bridge and start messing around with like sponsors and capacity and stuff like that, then the club would be like, well, hang on, we're not sponsored by Codemasters, right? Yep. We're not sponsored by Nike. We don't have a Umbro kit deal. And I think that's part of the problem. But yeah, if there was to be a competitor, I think it would have to be unlicensed, or not like unlicensed, but it would need to like focus on the gameplay rather than the realism.
Yeah, and leaning away from the realism of representing players one for one and clubs one for one, because both of those put them into territory where there's only so much that you can actually edit.
Yeah, definitely.
That point is a great segue into a game I want to talk about. So I like Llama, like Katy, I played a lot of these old school retro Football Manager games. You know, we were just talking about Total Club Manager. I think it's probably one of my favorite Football Manager franchises ever. Because of a lot of the things we're talking about there, the kind of the RP element of it, even if it was maybe potentially a little bit superficial because of the building of a stadium. The game I want to talk about actually released in 2025, but it was made with in the retro style. So you could quite easily play this game and you would believe it was a game back from the 90s. It's called Beckham's Football Manager. So I played this game on stream.
Sorry?
Beckham's.
Oh, I remember that, yeah.
Yeah. So
it looks like Beckham's, but it isn't.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
a bit like Brooklyn. Oh. Sorry.
So I played this game on stream. And it starts out as very cutesy, retro, pixelated Football Manager game. And it would remind you of those old schools. But nothing was that special about it. There was nothing unique about it until I started playing even more into the game. So the game gives you some things you can do with your money. You're allowed to do a couple of things with your money. You could put it into the club. If you want to, you could give your wages back to the club. But you can also siphon money out of the club. What you're also allowed to do is build a space agency. So you can build your very own space agency. And after you've built your space agency, you can even build your very own rocket, which you will then launch to space. The cost of this is extreme. So the space agency only costs like 2 million to set up. So you need enough wages to get 2 million. You make your own space agency. The rocket, however, costs like 300 million or something like that. Like it's quite a significant.
Only a few generations of wealth required then.
It's quite a significant amount of money. But as I was playing this game, I realized I wanted this rocket. Because what was the end goal? Like what was the end goal of this game other than to build my rocket and send it to space? And I ended up doing something that I've never really done in a Football Manager game recently, at least. And that is to abuse the mechanics of the game to the detriment of the players. So I could abuse the mechanics in that if I had a player coming through the youth intake, every year I gave them a new contract, I could get away with only giving them a slight increase in their wages, even though they were becoming world-class players. Whereas if I had bought a player that was already world-class, he would have cost me ridiculous amounts in wages. So then what I was also able to do is I was able to ask for a new contract once every couple of months. And every time I asked for a new contract, I tried to get the maximum amount of money for me. So I am paying my players, I'm paying them pennies for what they should be getting. And I am getting millions of pounds a month to go towards my space agency and my fucking rocket to go to space. What is interesting And maybe I was thinking too hard about this at the time.
Perhaps.
Eventually, during this adventure, I started feeling like the bad guy. I started to feel, what would I have done if I actually owned this club? In real life, what if I was the owner of a club? And what if I could get away with paying my players pennies? What would I do if I wanted to go to space? Would I do this? Would I become the bad? Would I become Elon Musk if I was given the opportunity to do so? Would I become the monster that I hate every day? And there was a couple of other things in this game. By the way, right, I recommend anyone play. You all play this game. I know Zealand did a video where he played some other management games, and he played this game briefly. He did not get into this meat of it. Like, you have to get into this bit of it. And I had a player die. He got murdered. Like, you can't do that. We just go talking about licensing. You can't have that. Like, I felt shit afterwards. Like, and there's a lot of, and then I'm getting blackmailed for some reason. I didn't know why I was getting blackmailed, so I paid them off, and then somebody else tried blackmailing me even more. And so I just had to keep on paying off these blackmails, because if I didn't pay it off, then I would be fined for something I don't know what I did. This game actually, this is what no game has ever done in my life, and it made me feel shit. Like, we all get frustrated at a game when we feel bad, we feel annoyed. But do we ever feel like we're the bad people? Do we ever feel like we're pieces of shit after playing a game? But
Crusader Kings.
Yeah, I've made some wacky choices in some games. Fallout, honestly, I've done some terrible things in Fallout.
I've never had a Football Manager game.
Oh, not a football game, no, that's fair. Yeah.
I've had such an emotional reaction to it that isn't just annoyance or joy at winning.
Yeah.
The only game where I could ever say I've had such an emotional reaction was Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons, which made me cry throughout that fucking game. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. Ank, does that help you in your evaluation that maybe we should move away from licensing?
Yeah, I have also played Boakman's Football Manager. I did not get to the rocket stage of things. Yeah. I was puttering around in the championship, very happy with my life. I liked the little things, like the fact that sometimes my players had pink hair, and if I went to their profile, it would tell me their hobbies and marital status. Yeah. And I was like, this is lovely. This is wonderful. I'm pleased to find out they can die, because that's kind of exciting. I had one come out at one point. And well, I assume they can probably die of natural or unnatural causes in many ways if murder is on the table. But yeah, no, that was actually like one of the games that was sort of in my mind, because it is one that I've played a few hours of. I didn't know that a space race was a part of it. They may be leaning into the like standard strategy game maxim that like any like road to victory has to involve a space race, which is a common theme over many of these games. But yeah, I think that that's a good example of where realism is very much at odds with what the game is trying to accomplish.
I think there's definitely a balance that you need. Like, Boakman's Football Manager is maybe like an extreme version of
You think?
You're out here playing like Football X and like rooting on your players to get murdered. You might be the baddie, Alice.
Oh no, I know I'm the baddie.
I would love to know if Llama still thinks this is the classier of the two FM
Llama's
shows.
like, I'm checked out now.
Well, it's taken a turn, I'll admit.
So, Llama.
Yes, space race, yes.
If we had a game, a Football Manager, like Boakman's Football Manager back in the day, where you could do that, where you could spend your wages on superficial things like space rockets and the space agency. And if it made you feel the way that I feel, or I felt about playing that game. Like, I'm the baddie, like I'm the piece of shit. Would you still have the same love for Football Manager games that you have now?
It's not something I have ever contemplated, to be honest. I'd settle for just being able to use my wages to fund my own coaching badges rather than having to beg a club that's in debt to do it. But to make a serious point, Miles, where's the space race? It's 2026. So.
I'm
Come
afraid
on.
you can't have a space race because you're just the manager.
I do have, like, this is a very small segue, but, you know, my FM24 save, I got to 2047. If I was vacationing all the time and simming matches, you can functionally get thousands of years in the future.
Yeah.
And nothing politically, culturally, economically is ever going to change in the game. I'm not sure that's something they need to touch.
Four countries will join the EU, but that's it. As far as we get.
There's not even any inflation, is there?
No.
Not really.
If anything, I think the opposite. I think transfer fees eventually collapse on themselves because clubs run out of money.
That I didn't know.
Sorry.
You're right. You could sim 100, 200, 1,000 years in the future, and things will be more or less the same. Yes, you might get a couple of extra teams in the Premier League that weren't there before, that were from non-league. But for the most part, that top six is probably going to be there. Maybe you might be missing one. And nothing changes. The attendances more or less will stay the same. The wages will stay the same. The quality of football and does FM need to evolve in that? Not only does it need to evolve from a gameplay standpoint, does the world itself need to evolve like it would in real life? Because right now, Football Manager, the world doesn't evolve in it.
I think that's difficult because I think so one of the things that SI are always really big on is making sure the game's accessible to like the maximum number of people, right? So you can theoretically run it on a potato is sort of where they're at. And I think the processing power it would take to have that sort of evolution in a game would be so difficult for most people's computers, right? Because you're talking about like moderately advanced like modeling for statistics and like economies and stuff like that. I think people play Football Manager for like hundreds of years sometimes, and I don't think it's really designed for that, right? I think like FM Touch limits you to, I think, 10 seasons, and I feel like maybe 10 or 20 is sort of where SI expect most people will go, actually, I'll maybe start something else.
Yeah.
So I don't think they've ever really accounted for that. Again, I think it would be difficult with licensed clubs. Like you very rarely have a club go bust. In fact, I don't know if they can. I think they'll go into admin, but I think they'll always get bailed out. So
I think at the very worst, they could get relegated out of professionalism. But that's like
but
extraordinarily unlikely, and they'll never disappear.
Because it's a licensing issue, right? Like if you have Man United go into administration and go bust, United will be on the phone like, excuse me, that just wouldn't happen. And it's the same. I think it comes back to the licensing stuff, right? Like it's really difficult to model what's going to happen to a professional football club in 100 years' time. But also like to even guess at what like sports science, nutrition, all that sort of thing. So like it would take so much, I think, just sheer computing power really to figure it out. But I do think it would be more viable if we had an unlicensed competitor.
Yeah.
Because they could do what they wanted. They could be like, in 5 years' time, we're going to blow the world up, you're going to play football on the moon, and everyone would be like, yeah, cool. Fair enough.
Unfortunately, none of the other football management simulation games at the moment, I think potentially the closest of recently was This Is Football.
Yeah.
But having played that, like, it definitely had an element of the retro games we were talking about, but something was definitely missing. Something was definitely wrong. It felt clunky and unenjoyable for that reason. So, Llama, a question for you. Of these games we've talked about today, and any others you might think of in the past, what do you want to see in Football Manager that doesn't exist right now that existed there? Like, or even is there? Is it a reason why these games fell foul to Football Manager and Sports Interactive?
Yeah, probably. Well, there must be, mustn't there? I mean, I don't think anybody has been able to rival Football Manager down the years for its scouting, for its database. I mean, they trade on this database, don't they? They sell it to clubs and things like that. So, I mean, can we honestly see a competitor emerging? A serious one? The only one that I could see would be if EA FC was to either launch a kind of like a parallel game that was manager only, or really drill down into the management of their EAFC. And I think if they did that, God, Football Manager could well be in trouble there.
Bring back Top Club Manager, I say.
Yeah, I think EA, I think you're right. I think they're and it's bad times, and that's who we're putting all our hopes in. I think the only other people I could see maybe doing it are if there's been chat about 2K or Take-Two or both getting their hands on the FIFA license that EA used to have. And I could see them making a relatively decent sort of role-play-ish type of game. But that's purely based on how they've run NBA 2K. So I don't know.
Ank, so you mentioned at the beginning of the stream that whilst you hadn't played any of these retro management simulation games, you had played games like The Sims. So based on what we've kind of talked about today and your experience with other management simulation games, what is it you want to see from FM that we can learn, that a Sports Interactive can learn from those franchises? And again, it's the same as Llama. Is there anything they can learn from those games?
So I think, first of all, like to build directly on what we just talked about, the lack of a competitor and the lack of like the game having to evolve because the competitor isn't there. I think pretty much a 1-for-1 parallel is what's happened with the Sims series. So Sims came out in like 1998, 1999, was revolutionary, only one of its kind of vibes. And was a small studio at that point, Maxis. They get bought out by EA, I think around the time of Sims 2, like within the Sims 2 development cycle. So. They, at that point, there's still like other competitors out there. There's nobody who's coming from it with exactly the same angle, but you have like massively online games like Second Life that were trying to do similar things. And the more that EA like sinks its claws in, the more that those little competitors disappear. And Sims gets bigger and bigger, more and more bloated, improves on some aspects, declines in others, really hones into the expansion pack model, the constant outpouring of downloadable content that's monetized, that's like, I think EA kind of did microtransactions before microtransactions were a standard part of every game ever. And Sims was one of the earliest places that I can be like, well, that's always been a part of the model. Now that we've gotten to Sims 4, which is at this point an over 10-year-old game. I think it came out in 2014. EA has announced that they're basically pausing development of Sims 5, that there just isn't going to be one. And they're going to continue to use Sims 4 as a game as service kind of model. The base game is free. They're monetizing everything else about it. And they just expect to upkeep that indefinitely. And that sort of decision making has gotten people fed up that you see a new wave of attempted competitors. There's Inzoi that was produced by a fairly large studio. There's Paralives, that's more like one person's pet project. None of these competitors have really gotten any traction for various reasons. Some of them rely too heavily on generative AI content. Some of them don't have a big enough development team or enough resources or enough initial investors to ever get to a launching point. It is a really uphill battle. And in the meantime, Sims has no incentive whatsoever to improve. And I can easily see like SI getting to that point, particularly in a scenario where SI's leadership is no longer Miles. And it's just propped up as an arm of Sega that needs to make money. And this is the method they choose to make money, which is a very depressing scenario that we should really hope doesn't happen, even if it does open the field to more serious competitors. So that's my depressing rant. But on the other angle, why was The Sims good when it was good? I think there's a couple things that it did very, very well in its early iterations that you can still find traces of later on. It is the ultimate dollhouse storytelling simulator. It is something where people will play generation after generation after generation of the same family because they had these stories playing out. Around the time of Sims 2, they really leaned heavily into like recording little music videos or little story episodes within the game and then posting those to like 2006 YouTube. And it was like playing dolls for adults. And the other thing is the enormous modding community, the community of people that just would absolutely reinvent the game, overhaul all the graphics, go for hyper-realism, go for stylized stuff, go in some cases for like adult content. Sims 4's biggest mods are things like that add things like drug simulators or like gang simulators so that people can elevate their little adult doll playing into, let's also tell like soap opera style stories. Yeah. And I think there can be room for that kind of angle in a sports game too. Absolutely. A lot of people are already doing it. They're just doing it in ways that the game doesn't necessarily facilitate or support. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that Sims was always great about is if you had no interest whatsoever in the gameplay itself, if the playing out stories with dolls was not up your alley at all, it had the most in-depth architectural tools that were available outside of professional software. It had the most complex character creation tools available outside of professional software. It had people learning 3D modeling as 11-year-olds to participate in the modding community. And that was without ever going into the live mode of play. So it's another example of like sandbox gameplay appealing to a lot of different play styles, which should be something that Football Manager crosses over with the data nerds, with the ardent fans of particular clubs, with the people that just want to role play out stories. All of those can be bridged.
So what you're saying is I should be the manager, the chairman, the director of football, the player if I want to be.
Or not.
And the drug
Precisely.
And the drug dealer.
Head of space operations.
Look, I gotta stop. I gotta stop.
You can't launch a rocket in The Sims, but the aliens will visit you, and they can get you pregnant.
You can now. I don't know if this is going to make you like re-download it and reinstall it. You can now travel to space in The Sims in a rocket.
So maybe EA is innovating after all. Maybe I was wrong.
But the space race with my neighbour last week.
For anyone that's expecting an Ank stream later on, Ank's busy playing The Sims 4.
It will now be The Sims.
We went back. We reverted.
The thing is as well, like The Sims, like the pausing of development of The Sims 5. I want to come back to that because a lot of people were talking about SI like stopping developing Football Manager and leaving this for 2 years. People went mental when EA said they were stopping developing Sims 5. Like, for all that, like, it's a 10-year-old game, but people were really, really annoyed. And I think EA managed it with The Sims because it's a 30-ish-year-old IP. They've given out 4 games already. There's something like £3,000 worth of expansions for it. I just don't think SI can make the same pivot for all that people think they could. If SI turned around next year and were like, you're having 26 again and here's a data update, nah, not a chance. Because I think that people, goes back to like who the player base are, right? Like, people want updated squads, they want new stuff, they want new ways to interact with the game. I'm just not sure that what we get now is really what they want, right? Like, if I know I literally on the last podcast, I'm pretty sure I ranted about people slagging off FM26 because it's just time to get on with it. But see, if I like open up a promotional video for FM27 and it tells me they've like, I don't know, brought in a role of like a training consultant, I will be so annoyed, right? Like, I don't want to redo training. I want to spend my money on buying a yacht so that when I win the title in March, I can fuck off to Ibiza for 3 months, come back skint, and find myself a new job. Like, that I think, giving players more control over how they play the game, right? Like, ideally, they would give you an experience where if you want to be the data nerd, you can be the data nerd. But if you want to roleplay, you can roleplay, right? Because the amount of people just now that, like, hand off the press conferences to their assistant manager, hand off training to their assistant... Like, my assistant manager is the manager, and I am the director of football, right? Like, I show up to the games, I might as well sit in the stands. Like, and I think one of the reasons that 26 is so chalk and cheese is because the people that want to roleplay will go and they'll play the games, and that's fine. But the people who have been the director of football don't have that immersion anymore. And I think they've got to find like a middle ground, and I think they need to look at the old games to see like where that middle ground is. And I don't think the reason that the old games don't exist anymore is because they were objectively bad. I think it's just that a lot of the people who grew up on like a Total Club Manager got to a point where we became the nerds, right? Like Alex becoming the baddie on David whatever his face Football Manager, right? Like, eventually we became the nerds and we were like, right, I want a spreadsheet that I can play, right? And then now we've had a spreadsheet that we can play for 20 years and we're like, it needs something else. Yeah? I think it's a cycle. I think it's that sort of, we're not all before the comments, I'm not bored of this. I know, we're not all bored of the spreadsheet, right? I think a lot of people are. A lot of people didn't like the spreadsheet changing. I have my thoughts on that. I'm going to keep them to myself. But I think people want something that's different because we've had the same game. Even though we've got a new UI, it's been the same fundamental experience for 20 years, right? And I think moving to Unity opens that opportunity up, I think, because it's much more customizable than their own engine. But I think they have to go back and look at what made the older games so much fun, because they need that. They need to bring the fun back to it, I think.
So what we're saying is Miles needs to go and play Total Club Manager, Ultimate Soccer Manager.
I think if you let Miles play Total Club Manager, you'd have to wheel him out of SI in like some sort of emergency vehicle because he was not enjoying being allowed to spend his money. I just don't see him liking it. And that's the problem, because I think SI is so much... I'm not saying Miles is the problem. Am I? Maybe. I don't know. But I think he is so attached to this game, right? Like, I don't think there's many games that are the size that Football Manager is that are so much in the hands of, like, one person, right? And he's done so much for the franchise. Like, there's no denying that what he has accomplished is great. But I just feel like it's now at a point where if he wouldn't play it, nobody plays it.
So it's interesting. You should mention like Miles there. So if Like, I don't want to speak ill of Miles.
I fear I'm treading in the waters where I'm going to get like a cease and desist from SI's lawyers. Like, he does like spending money. Leave him alone.
But I think, Katy, you, I, and Llama, we look at these old games, and maybe it is nostalgia. Maybe we are set. Maybe we're the problem when we look at those games. Like, we look at them so fondly.
Yeah.
So maybe Miles has that same thing with Football Manager. Maybe he sees the Football Manager that the Championship Manager that he and his crew created all those years ago.
Yeah.
And maybe he can't let go of that. Just
100%.
Just like you can't let go of your yacht.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Llama, before we sign off, if you were to recommend, if you would at all, a retro football management simulation game that wasn't made by Sports Interactive to Ank, what one would it be?
Oh, there's a question. So maybe I'd go with, for me, what was the gateway into management? Okay, so you know how you have what's called gateway drugs that are meant to kind of expose people to a little soupçon of the dark side that might tempt them to become a full-on heroin addict or something like that. But I'm not recommending heroin to Ank, by the way. But in the early 90s, there were lots and lots of games that, because there was kind of like a little bit of a graphical evolution, there was lots of games, a little bit like very early FIFAs, that you would control the players. So there was the very first one I ever played was called Micro Pros Soccer, where you either had to play as a little international team, or bizarrely, there was a mode where you played in an American indoor league. But it was really odd. But you can only play the games. You can only move the little players around. And then like sensible soccer, like you kind of like move the little players around. Yeah. But then there was like a little hybrid one that was kind of like, well, you do play the games, but there's a management element to it as well. And it was my little gateway away from playing the football matches into the management side. And it was called, bizarrely, Manchester United Europe. Not Manchester United competing in Europe or in Europe, just Manchester United Europe. And it's basically where you played a campaign of European football with Manchester United. But you could pick the team, you could design the tactic, quite rudimentary. I believe in the later versions, you could even sign players for it as well. And that was like, oh my goodness, it exists. You can actually manage a team now. This is absolutely fabulous. And so within maybe 2 years of playing that game, I think that was like 1991, I was purchasing Championship Manager 93, and I didn't even care about moving the little players around with a joystick anymore. It was all about, just clicks and signings. Manchester United Europe, it's the one.
I think we all collectively just looked up the game. I don't think I'd ever heard of it before either.
You might need to get yourself an Amiga 500 in order to be able to play this.
Katy, I got the same question to you. If you were to recommend one of these old school football management games not made by Sports Interactive to Ank, what would you do?
It's tricky. I actually think in an ideal world where we could go back and experience the games like as they were built, right? I think the one Ank would enjoy the most, coming from a sort of like played some FIFA career mode, came to Football Manager, would be Total Club Manager 2004. And I'll tell you for why. Because of there was a feature. No, not the yachts. Actually, I've moved on from the yachts because I have been reminded that on, I think it was 2004 and 2005, Total Club Manager had a thing called Football Fusion. So you could manage your team on Total Club Manager. you could export your team and you could load them in on FIFA and you could play with your team against other people's teams, but actually control the players. Right? So as well as the yacht, you have this weird, glorious, I remember my dad's just as much of a nerd as I am, right? And he would spend hours with his team, and I would spend hours with my team. And we would come together on a Saturday at the PlayStation, and I would be like, "Good morning, William. How is your team?" And I would batter him, right? I would absolutely do him at FIFA. And then he'd go away and he'd tinker with it for another week and he'd sign some more player and he'd come back and he'd be, "I'll beat you this." Never. And then I found the press button and that was it. It was over for everybody. But that ability to take your team and actually play with them, sensational. That and the yacht. I think that's a complete sales pitch. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
So, Ank, the game I would recommend to you was Ultimate Soccer Manager? I believe it was Ultimate Soccer Manager. So this kind of game had the same elements of a lot of the ones we're talking about today, where you could expand your stadium, but not on the stadium screen. Not only could you expand your stadium, you could build your little huts, like your little burger van by there. You could have your little shop by there, and you get to place it wherever you want. And that element definitely Sims-esque. But also, you could rig the games. You could place a bet against your team, and then you could throw the game, and you could win the club. You could win the club on betting £1 million plus per game that you do that. So if you're ever in dire financial troubles, just bet against your team, throw the game, and don't do what I did, was bet against your team, win, and then the press have a go at me because I bet against my team and we won the game.
So I have just looked up this game, the Ultimate Soccer Manager 98-99.
Yeah.
And I feel like I am duty-bound to read to you the blurb. Oh,
please.
So, it has, although very similar to Championship Manager in terms of epic scope, now the epic scope is 400 clubs, 7 European leagues, and 12,000 individual players. It is better for one thing: a statistics editor. This allows you to edit the teams and players and keep them up to date, something that is a very nice touch and not seen in soccer management sims until much later. In addition to new features that set the game apart from competitors, USM 98 boasts one of the most detailed and realistic transfer systems ever devised. Similar to business games such as Hollywood Mogul, it's next on my list to read, the game requires you to negotiate with the club and the player's agent. You can loan, buy, or exchange players, and even offer extra cash if the player plays more than 15 matches, for example. You can have all 6 European leagues run at the same time, which opens up the possibility of not only player transfers, but also management offers from clubs in Serie A.
That's very specific.
Yeah, I feel like that might have been the only other league you could manage in if it wasn't England. The game offers 2 play modes. Either full management, running the entire club from advertising to pricing snacks, or coach, football elements only. If SI could write that down, great. There are numerous other nice touches, such as the excellent tactics editor, I've yet to see an image, post-match newspaper reports, and a much improved interface that is much more accessible for beginners than the esoteric interface of Championship Manager 2. Although there are a few, and this is the part where I think I can understand why Alice likes this game. Okay. Although there are a few shortfalls, such as the limited number of available players for transfer and the apparent ease of play, it seems you won't get sacked no matter how badly you're managing the team. In all other aspects, USM is the game that equals or even exceeds Championship Manager 2. If you're a soccer fan, this is a must-have. That's my review.
Audience, and if that doesn't sell these retro games to you, I don't know what will.
I love that the statistics editor was like a brand new feature in 1998.
All three of these sound like very great options, but I'm going to go for a fourth option. And that is I'm going to be getting a postcard. I'm going to be writing my desired starting 11 on it. I'm going to be cutting out photos of them and pasting them in. And I'm going to be sending that postcard to Katy, who will then tell me whether I got them or not in roughly 6 to 8 business days.
Excellent. I'll get right on that I'll get my dice out for my D&D and I'll just roll some dice.
I'm down.
I bet that's what they were doing. I bet they played football Dungeons and Dragons and then just wrote back to all of the children being like, no, sorry, your striker died in a terrible fireball accident. And I'm afraid I have to send another £2.
If you tell a young child writing to you with this £2 note that his striker died, will anyone sue you? Or does anyone ever know?
I don't think anyone would ever know. I think the child would be too traumatized to advise their parents of what had happened.
Nobody sued anybody in the 90s.
There we go. I think we found the real solution.
What I really want now is I want a Dungeons and Dragons campaign book that's football based. That would be sick. That's what I want. That's my aspiration in life now.
Have you seen the D&D? Well, it's not quite D&D, but the RNG roles table that I use on my channel to design players? Katy, I think, has witnessed it now.
Sensational. I have witnessed. I was seated for some time. Mm-hmm. Great.
Fantastic. So with that, I think it is time to sign off. But before we do, we are going to talk about something either outside of football that one of you would like to talk about. Well, all of you would like to talk about. I'll start with you, Katy.
Oh, it's always me.
It is always you.
Outside of football.
It's because you're Scottish. I'm always mean to the Scots.
I feel like that's a little, what's the word? Racist? Racism? Actually, outside of football, I had a student today tell me they didn't like Iron Brew. And I told him that was racist. And he was like, well, it tastes like medicine. And I was like, well, it's not my problem. And then he threatened to the next time he goes home, he's going to bring me back the medicine that Iron Brew tastes of. And I was like, what is it medicine for? And he was like, I can't say. I don't think I'll be taking on that. Outside of football, what have I been up to? I've been playing more Dungeons and Dragons. I am thoroughly addicted to Dungeons and Dragons. And I have discovered that I really, really like the role-playing element of Dungeons and Dragons. But I got through I think it was my third session, and I almost died because I'd role-played myself. So I'd made this cleric who was completely against violence. And it turns out that's not a good idea. Your cleric should probably be able to hit things. So he's had a near-death experience and has been reborn and now knows attacking spells as well. And I've finally figured out how bonus actions and cantrips and spells work. And I'm really proud of myself. So that's what I've been up to.
Do you know what I think we should do? The FM Show Network Dungeons and Dragons group.
Absolutely, yes. I have about 6 characters ready to go. Just let me know when.
Hank, what's your thing outside of football?
So I feel like I've gone overboard with the binge watching in the past couple of weeks. So I'll give you 2 series to binge watch, but maybe not at the same time. I watched all of The Pit in about 4 days. Mm-hmm. Fantastic show. I am not a medical drama type person, but I think the best aspect of this show is that it's basically real time. So every episode is 1 hour in the emergency room chronologically, following the same characters, the same situations, the same cases over the course of one night. And in the first season. And then the second season is a different night, but same setup. And that sort of structure for a TV series is great. Absolutely love it. You get a surprising amount of character development in a short period of real time. But absolutely love that show. And I also just finished the second season of Fallout last night, which totally very different, but also would recommend.
After the pod today, that's what I plan on doing, is watching the final episode.
On my list for the weekend to get through the whole season. I also just read all 3 games that are not in 2D.
Llama, what's your thing you'd like to share with us outside of football?
Well, it's kind of football adjacent, if that's all right. And Katy did say, just ignore the outside of football. Because
to be fair,
outside of football, really, what is there?
Katy ignores all my instructions anyway. So.
Quite right.
False. I did pay attention to the time that I was meant to be Secret Tony.
And how well at that did you do?
Very badly.
Okay, no.
Very badly. Everything about that game was a mess.
Llama, I implore you to watch that episode. Only the Tony the Neanderthal section. That was my favourite.
Tony the Neanderthal was sensational.
I think that during the course of the last hour and 14 minutes, Katy has rocketed up my league table of FM icons. Personally, I think she should lead all FM debates in future.
Did you hear that? Next episode, you're the anchor. Well done.
Listen, I've been called worse. Oh, anchor, sorry.
What do you mean they called you?
I thought you'd called me a wanker, Alison. It wouldn't be the first time. I mean, to be fair, I did just read an entire blurb of a game just to get a jab in about you not being able to manage a football team. So
sorry, Llama.
It would be justified. Sorry, Llama. I thought I'd derail everything.
No, but that's so. If you allow me to do something football adjacent, like many of us, I spend my evenings by the fireside contemplating which woodland creatures famous footballers are most like. Is Lionel Messi a pine marten? Is Cristiano Ronaldo a weasel? So I would ask each of the 3 of you, which famous footballer would you most liken to a popular yet jaunty woodland creature?
Good God.
Wow. I thought I was the one that did all the games.
We're getting way esoteric with these.
Right, woodland. I'm trying to Google woodland creatures list.
Oh, come on.
How many woodland creatures do you know off the top of your head?
Clues in the title there, as in creatures of the woodland.
No, I know, but you've already used.
I mean, you can broaden it out. I'll accept the hedgerows if you like.
The hedgerows.
Are we talking European woodlands or North American woodlands?
Well, I am more at fay with the European woodland, but I mean, this is a cosmopolitan show. If you want to...
I feel like we should be clear, though. Is Ank not quite close to Appalachia?
I'm in Appalachia, and you don't say it that way.
I wasn't sure, honestly. I had to go at it. So
it was a very brave go, but
it's not as bad as the time I called prosciutto ham in front of an Italian.
It's okay. I spent half my stream being corrected on British place names by my chat. So,
how'd you say it?
Appalachia.
Okay.
Appalachia.
Gotcha.
You'll hear a lot of Americans who aren't from here get it wrong too.
If we're talking about Appalachian woodlands, Peter Crouch is quite a slender man. That's about as good as I've got, really.
If it's woodland creatures, for me, it's the obvious one. It would be Bunny Shaw as a bunny.
I think that's a cop-out, actually.
A bit, yeah.
Fun fact for Bunny Shaw. Bunny Shaw is an Appalachian creature. Bunny Shaw played for the University of Tennessee Volunteers prior to going professional.
That is cool.
Our greatest export to women's soccer, at least in the past couple of years.
How is that answers, Llama? Have we sufficiently completely ruined what you were trying to get at?
No, those answers were disappointing, I won't lie. I don't think you put as much thought into this as I was hoping. And your knowledge of woodland creatures is derisible, to be brutally honest. Honestly, you throw a question like this to Aaron Falloon or Tony Jameson's way, and they'll be on this for hours, debating stoat versus gerbil.
Are gerbils really woodland creatures? I don't think they are.
I wouldn't have
You've
said
also
so.
given us a surprisingly large amount of weasel adjacent creatures. We've got stoats, we've got weasels, we've got pine martens.
Oh, yeah.
I think you're the one that needs to branch out, Llama.
Well, you want to stay away from your
out here
obvious
with like
ones.
a vermin army from Redwall. Like that's.
So I would like to share my. I'm gonna do what Llama's done. I'm gonna slightly cheat. My one will be football adjacent. I'm back streaming now, so I did give up for a while during my move. But we are back streaming, but not Football Manager. Still playing Football Manager in the background, but not Football Manager streaming. I'm currently playing a game called Inazuma 11, which is a anime style football game. And this game is batshit fucking crazy. If anyone would like a break from Football Manager or football management games, please play Inazuma 11 Victory Road. It's a very story-driven game, and as you might expect, it's full of anime tropes. But what I love most is that in order to save one of the characters' legs from getting hit by a pipe, the protagonist put his head in the way of the pipe, got hit in the back of the head by the pipe, and I am convinced we're playing this game in purgatory. So please, I implore you all, play Inazuma 11 Victory Road if you can get it on offer on Steam. Anyway, thank you very much for joining us, Llama and Katy. Until next time, thank you very much for hanging out. And audience, I hope you enjoyed this trip down memory lane, and we will see you for the next episode of the WFM Show. Have fun, take care, and goodbye. Take care.